The wedding was perfect. On the tables there were very expensive white flowers that had been brought from Holland. The glasses glittered under the crystal chandeliers, and the French wine flowed like water. All the guests were important people. Businessmen, politicians, actors, all with rehearsed smiles, expensive dresses, and secrets hidden behind polite glances. And in the middle of it all, Santiago Velez, the millionaire that everyone in the city knew. The same man who had gone from living in a 2-bedroom apartment with his ailing mother to becoming one of the richest businessmen in the country. Today was his day. Today he was marrying the senator's daughter, a marriage of power, business, status, not love. Santiago smiled, but inside he felt nothing. No emotion, no joy. It was like signing a contract with champagne. Sophia, his future wife, was beautiful. Yes, intelligent too. But she was not the one he truly loved. It wasn't Laura. Laura was his past, his mistake, his deepest wound. The woman he was with when he was a nobody, when he barely had enough to pay the rent and rice. She truly loved him. She loved him with hunger, with cold, with hope, but he left her not out of malice, but out of ambition. One day he just disappeared. No goodbyes, no explanations, just a message. Sorry, I can't continue. Then silence. Out. And now, after 6 years, Santiago was marrying someone else, someone who had never met his broken self. The guests began to sit down. The sound of the string quartet filled the air. Everything was ready. Santiago looked toward the altar with his jaw tense, his hands cold, but his steps firm. He walked confidently, as if everything was under control, as if there was nothing that could ruin that day, until he saw her. There at the back of the room, just as the ceremony was about to begin, a woman in a simple dress entered, holding a little girl's hand. Nobody knew them. Nobody expected them, but Santiago did. His eyes opened, and for the first time in years his heart skipped a beat. Laura was her, thinner, more serious, stronger, but she was still her. And the girl, my God, the girl had her eyes. Nobody understood why he froze in the middle of the altar. Nobody knew that moment would turn his life around. Laura walked forward slowly, without saying a word. She held her head high, but her eyes were fixed on him. I wasn't looking for scandals. He had only accepted the invitation he himself had sent. An irony, isn't it? He invited her, perhaps out of pride, perhaps because he wanted to show her what she missed. But now she was there with a girl with dark hair, dark skin, and a look that could only come from a veilless Santiago swallowed. The music stopped. Everyone turned to look at them. The silence became awkward. Sophia, on the other end, didn't understand why her fiancé wasn't moving, why he had lost his color, why his eyes were fixed on that little girl. Laura stopped a few steps from the central aisle. Her daughter, who was no more than 5 years old, looked around innocently. Then she looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and fear. Laura leaned over and whispered something in his ear. Gura nodded and stepped forward. Then, with a low but clear voice, the girl said a single word, a word that fell like a bomb in the middle of the altar. Dad. Santiago felt as if the world had gone silent. Dad. That word shouldn't have been there. Not at her wedding. Not said by a girl with the same eyes as him. Not by the daughter of the woman he abandoned as if she were worthless. But there it was, as real as the ring in his pocket. The guests looked at each other, some shocked, others amused. The press in the background began to move their cameras like sharks smelling blood. What's going on? Sophia asked from the altar, her voice trembling. Santiago did not answer. Couldn't. I didn't know how. His throat had closed. His gaze went from Laura to the girl, as if his mind was trying to deny it, reject it, tear it away from reality. But I couldn't. She was his daughter. He didn't need proof. No DNA evidence. No confessions. He knew it as soon as he saw her. Laura wasn't looking for a scene, but she wasn't going to keep quiet any longer either. He walked slowly down the hall until he stood before him in front of everyone. He didn't cover up. He didn't hide. He just spoke firmly, without anger, but with pain.
Her name is Emma. She's 5 years old, and I didn't come to ruin your wedding, Santiago. I only came because you invited me and because my daughter has been
asking for you for 5 years? I never lied to him. I just told him that his father had taken another path. But when the invitation arrived with your name on it, he asked if he could meet you. I thought maybe you deserved to see it at least once. Santiago opened his mouth, but no words came out. Shame, fear, guilt, everything crushed like a mountain on his chest. His mother, sitting in the front row, looked at him with her lips pursed. She knew about Laura. She always knew, and at that moment, she lowered her gaze. Sophia, on the other hand, walked toward him with slow, furious steps, like a queen about to abdicate. Is it true? He asked, in her ear. Do you have a daughter? Santiago barely nodded. It was a minimal gesture, but enough. Sophia recoiled back as if she had been spat in the face. He looked at Laura, then at the girl, and finally at the audience. And then, with the same aplomb with which he always spoke at social events, he took the priest's microphone and said, "Excuse me, everyone, this wedding will not go on." There were murmurs, flashes, and some rather hypocritical applause. Sophia walked off the altar, head held high, but with tears in her eyes. Now, she didn't look back. She just disappeared through the large door, escorted by her parents, who were already starting to plan how to clean up the media disaster. Santiago stood there like a ruined statue. The little girl looked at him now, afraid. He bent down slowly, still trembling, and said to her in a broken voice, "Emma." She nodded with those big, moist eyes. "Can I hug you?" he asked. The little girl looked at her mother, who gestured for her to say yes, and then she took a step and hugged him with those small, sincere arms, free of all resentment. And in that moment, Santiago cried like he hadn't since he was a child. Unfiltered tears that spilled over his cheeks and soaked into the fabric of his tailored suit. His shoulders shook with the weight of years buried beneath, layers of denial, ambition, and regret. It wasn't just sadness coursing through him, it was everything. For the abandonment, the choices that had led him far from where he began. For the guilt and gnawing ache he'd tried to drown in wealth and status but could never fully silence. And for what could have been an imagined life that now felt as distant as a fading star. Laura knelt beside him, her presence both grounding and unsettling. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached out to touch his shoulder, the gesture tentative yet deliberate. "I didn't come for money," she whispered, her voice steady despite the storm brewing within her own heart. "I don't need anything from you." The words hung heavy in the air, cutting through the cacophony of emotions swirling around them. "I just wanted her to know who you are, and for you to know what you left behind." Santiago's breath hitched as he looked up, meeting her gaze for the first time in years. There was no resentment in her eyes, only truth, stark, unyielding truth that pierced him like a bullet to the soul. In that instant, he understood something profound. His life had changed forever. Not because of the scandal unfolding outside or the whispers of judgment echoing through the grand hall, but because of the fragile, undeniable connection staring back at him. He saw it in Laura's face, the exhaustion etched into her features. The quiet strength that had carried her through years of solitude and sacrifice. She wasn't here to punish him or demand retribution. She was here to give him a chance to rewrite the story they had started so long ago, even if neither of them knew how it would end. As the realization settled over him, Santiago felt the walls he had built around himself begin to crumble. The man who had once prided himself on control and composure was now undone by the simplest of truths. He was a father, and nothing, not his wealth, not his success, not even the expectations of others, could shield him from the responsibility that came with that title. The waiters moved silently, their practiced efficiency belying the chaos that had erupted. Mere moments before, it cleared away the pristine plates, untouched and gleaming under the soft chandeliers. Each piece a testament to an evening that had unraveled spectacularly. The musicians, sensing the shift in atmosphere, began packing up their instruments, their melodies silenced mid-note. The guests, initially stunned into silence, gradually found their voices, whispering among themselves, dissecting every detail of the scene they had witnessed. In the corner, a group of women huddled together, their heads bent close as they exchanged theories about what had transpired. "Did you see his face?" one asked, her voice tinged with awe and disbelief. Another nodded fervently, adding, "It was like he'd seen a ghost." The men, too, were not immune to the spectacle, their murmurs carrying a mix of shock and schadenfreude. "This is going to be all over the news tomorrow," one remarked, already envisioning the headlines. The bride-to-be Sophia stood frozen near. The altar, her expression, a mixture of confusion and betrayal. Her friends surrounded her, offering comfort and reassurances, though their eyes darted frequently towards the closed door behind which Santiago had disappeared. The room, once alive with anticipation and joy, now buzzed with tension and gossip, the air thick with unsaid accusations and rampant speculation. Outside, photographers who had gathered hoping to capture the perfect wedding shot instead captured images of guests leaving hurriedly, some looking visibly shaken, others smirking knowingly. Reporters jotted down notes, eager to piece together the narrative of what promised to be the most talked-about scandal of the year. As the last car drove away, the venue felt eerily silent, a stark contrast to the earlier bustle. The grandeur of the setting seemed almost mocking now, its opulence overshadowed by the human drama that had unfolded within its walls. Santiago sat quietly in a small, dimly lit room adjacent to the main hall, the sound of his own breathing, strangely loud in the stillness. Beside him, Laura perched on a simple wooden chair, her posture tense yet resolute. On his lap, Emma lay curled up, her small body rising and falling with the gentle rhythm of sleep. Her tiny fingers clutched at his shirt, as if anchoring herself to this new reality. Santiago watched her intently, each breath she took sinking. With his own heartbeat, a poignant reminder of the years he had missed. He said nothing, simply absorbed the sight of his daughter. Each second stretched out, laden with significance, as if he were trying to compensate for lost time with every tick of the clock. The room bare, except for a few chairs and a small table, seemed to echo with the enormity of the moment. The soft hum of the overhead light provided a faint backdrop to his internal monologue. Each thought waited with newfound clarity and resolve. Finally, breaking the silence, Santiago's voice emerged hoarse and hesitant. "Why didn't you tell me?" His question, though directed at Laura, seemed more a plea to the universe, a desperate attempt to understand the forces that had conspired to keep him apart from his child. Laura's eyes met his, filled with pain but devoid of hatred. Her response was measured, each word chosen with care, reflecting the complex tapestry of emotions she harbored. "And what were you going to do, Santiago?" she began, her tone tinged with a bitterness, born not of malice but of long-held disappointment. "Come back out of pity, out of commitment? You left me without a word. And when I found out you were already in another world, designer clothes, parties, women who didn't even know where you came from." Her voice faltered briefly, betraying the vulnerability beneath her composed exterior. "I stayed in the same neighborhood, raising a daughter who had your face and my character. I wasn't going to beg you, much less for her." Santiago lowered his gaze, the weight of her words sinking in. The material wealth he had accumulated, the power he wielded, the facade he maintained, all paled in comparison to the richness of the life he had forfeited unknowingly. His achievements, once sources of pride, now felt hollow against the backdrop of his daughter's quiet presence. The simplicity of her trust, her unconditional acceptance, highlighted the superficiality of his previous pursuits. In that room, removed from the glare of public scrutiny and the trappings of his former life, Santiago experienced a profound shift. The roles had reversed. He was no longer the powerful magnate dictating terms, but a man humbled by the realization of what truly mattered. As he held Emma closer, feeling the warmth of her tiny body against his, he vowed silently to embrace this new chapter, whatever it might entail. Here, amidst the quiet and the shadows, Santiago found a semblance of peace, a starting point for redemption and genuine connection. "Can I be in her life?" Santiago's voice broke the silence, barely above a whisper, heavy with hope and fear. His eyes, usually sharp and commanding, now pleaded for a chance he feared might be beyond reach. Laura's response was not immediate. She crossed her arms tightly, her gaze searching his face for any sign of insincerity. The room seemed to shrink around them, the decision looming larger than the physical space they occupied. Laura's thoughts raced, replaying countless days when Emma had innocently asked if her dad was in heaven. Her little voice tinged with a sorrow that should have been unfathomable for a child. Nights when, after bedtime stories and goodnight kisses, Emma had declared that having a mom was enough, masking her longing with a brave smile. Laura remembered the cold stare Santiago had worn at the altar, mirroring the detachment with which he had once left her. Could she trust him to stay, to be present, to truly be a father? "I don't want you coming in and out of her life like you came in and out of mine." Alara finally spoke, her voice firm, setting boundaries that needed no embellishment. "If you're going to be there for real. You're not an Instagram post. You're not a framed photo. You're her father, and she deserves a real father." Each word was a step towards reclaiming power over their fractured narrative, a declaration that Emma's future would not be dictated by past failures. Santiago nodded, swallowing hard, the gravity of Laura's condition settling heavily on his shoulders. He understood it was no longer about wanting. It was about assuming responsibility, about stepping up in ways he had never considered necessary before. "Laura, I know that what I did to you is unforgivable. Not here to ask you to get back together, or even to trust me. Just let me show Emma who I am, who I want to be for her." His voice wavered, sincerity replacing arrogance, vulnerability taking the place of control. Laura watched him for a moment longer, gauging the sincerity in his eyes, the earnestness. In his plea, slowly she rose from her seat, picking up her bag, her movements deliberate. Standing tall, she looked him straight in the eyes, her resolve unwavering. "You have a chance, Santiago, a real one. Don't blow it with her." With those parting words, she left him a card not with her number, but with that of a child psychologist. The message was clear. If he wanted to enter Emma's life, he would have to do it right. No trauma, no cheap mistakes, no excuses. As Laura walked out, Santiago remained seated, the card in his hand a tangible symbol of the path ahead. It was daunting, yes, but also filled with promise, a chance to redefine what it meant to be a father. To fill the void left by years of absence with actions rather than words. He knew the road would be fraught with challenges, that rebuilding trust would take more than apologies and promises. But for the first time, he was ready to walk it, step by uncertain step. For Emma, days later, Santiago vanished from the public eye, retreating into a self-imposed exile that shocked the world he had once dominated. Contracts were canceled. Trips postponed indefinitely. Interviews declined without explanation. Even the return of Sophia's ring, a gesture steeped in symbolism, was executed quietly, without fanfare or justification. For the first time in his life, Santiago stopped caring about appearances, about the opinions of others. His priorities had shifted irrevocably, anchored now by a single, profound purpose: to become the father Emma deserved. Every week, without fail, Santiago arrived at the modest office of Dr. Alina Morales, a renowned child psychologist whose reputation extended far beyond her unassuming practice. The sessions were unlike anything Santiago had ever experienced. At first, he struggled. His polished charm and practiced eloquence felt out of place in a room designed for raw honesty and vulnerability. Emma too approached these meetings with caution. She drew pictures, played with toys, and occasionally spoke in fragments, her words carefully chosen, as though testing the waters of this new dynamic. Time. However, the barriers began to dissolve. Santiago learned to listen, not just to respond, but to truly hear. He discovered a patience he didn't know he possessed, sitting quietly as Emma expressed herself in ways that transcended language. Together, they navigated the delicate process of building trust, brick by painstaking brick. One afternoon, during a particularly candid session, Emma looked up from her coloring book and asked, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and hesitation. "Dad, can you come to my school presentation?" The question caught Santiago off guard, not because of its simplicity, but because of the depth of meaning it carried. This wasn't just an invitation to an event, it was a test, a moment of reckoning. Would he show up? Would he follow through? Santiago's response was immediate and unwavering. "Of course, my love. Wouldn't miss it for the world." True to his word, Santiago attended the presentation, sitting in the back row of the small auditorium, his heart pounding as Emma stepped onto the stage. She faltered momentarily, her eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on him. A shy smile spread across her face, and she began her performance with newfound confidence. Afterward, she ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. "You came," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. It was a small victory, but to Santiago, it felt monumental, a tangible affirmation that he was beginning to earn her trust. Months passed, and while Santiago and Laura did not rekindle their romantic relationship, their interactions became more frequent and meaningful. Laura adjusted the strap of her bag, her fingers brushing against the worn leather as she glanced. At Santiago, across the cafe table, the afternoon sun streamed through the window, casting golden streaks across his face. But she couldn't quite bring herself to meet his eyes for more than a fleeting moment. It wasn't that she distrusted him, entirely far from it. Over the past few months, Santiago had proven himself in ways she hadn't anticipated, his actions speaking louder than the apologies he'd once offered. But trust was a fragile thing, and Laura's heart still bore the scars of their shared history. She didn't forget, nor did she pretend to forgive fully. Not yet, anyway. Yet here they were, sitting together, navigating the complexities of co-parenting with a maturity neither of them had expected of themselves. Their conversations often revolved around Emma, their daughter, vibrant, curious 6-year-old who had inherited her mother's sharp intellect and her father's quiet determination. They discussed her progress in school, her burgeoning dreams of becoming an artist, and the fears that sometimes kept her awake at night. Each topic was approached with care, as though they were handling something delicate, something that could shatter if mishandled. And perhaps they were. Their shared commitment to Emma's well-being had become the cornerstone of their fragile alliance. A bond forged not out of affection for one another, but out of love for her. Santiago leaned forward slightly, his voice steady but softened by an earnestness Laura hadn't seen in him before. "I've been thinking about enrolling her in art classes," he said, his gaze fixed on the table between them. "She's always drawing, and I thought maybe it would help her focus her energy." Laura nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. "That's a good idea," she replied, her tone measured. "But we should make sure it's something she wants, not just something we think she needs." Of course, Santiago agreed quickly, almost too quickly. "I wouldn't push her into anything, I just... I want her to have opportunities I never did." The words hung in the air for a moment, heavy with unspoken meaning. Laura studied him then, really looked at him and saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Vulnerability. It was strange seeing Santiago like this, open, raw, almost human in a way she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge until now. He wasn't the same man who had walked away all those years ago, leaving her to pick up the pieces of their fractured relationship. That man had been reckless, selfish, consumed by ambition, and blind to the consequences of his choices. Santiago, the one sitting across from her now, was different. "I know you're trying," Laura said finally, her voice quieter than before. "And I appreciate it, but... She paused, searching for the right words. "It's going to take time. For both of us." Santiago nodded, his jaw tightening imperceptibly. He understood what she meant. Time and patience. Two things he had rarely afforded himself in the past, but now seemed willing to embrace. "I get it," he said simply, "and I'm okay with that." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable exactly, but it was charged with the weight of everything left unsaid. Laura sipped her coffee, the warmth of the mug grounding her as her thoughts drifted to Emma. Their daughter had become the bridge between them. a living reminder of what they had once shared and what they could still build together if only they were willing to try. As the conversation shifted to more practical matters, school schedules, extracurricular activities, and weekend plans, Laura found herself relaxing ever so slightly. There was still a distance between them, a cautious reserve that neither seemed ready to relinquish. But beneath it all, there was also a flicker of hope, a fragile, tentative belief that they could do this, that they could navigate the complexities of co-parenting without letting the past consume them. For Santiago, the effort was deliberate, almost painstaking. He knew he couldn't erase the mistakes he had made, no matter how hard he tried. But he could show up, could listen, could be present. And in doing so, he hoped to prove to Laura, to Emma, perhaps most importantly, to himself, that he was capable of change. When their meeting ended, they parted ways with a polite nod and a brief exchange of pleasantries. As Santiago walked back to his car, he felt a sense of unease settle over him. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges he couldn't yet foresee. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of clarity. This wasn't about redemption or absolution. It was about Emma. And if he could hold on to that, if he could keep her at the center of everything he did, then maybe, just maybe, he could find his way forward. The park was alive with the sounds of children's laughter and the gentle rustle of leaves swaying in the breeze. Santiago sat on a weathered wooden bench, his arms resting on his knees, as he watched Emma pedal her small pink bike along the winding path. Her pigtails bounced with each turn of the wheels, and her giggles carried through the air like music. Despite the serene setting, Santiago's brow furrowed slightly as he observed her wobbly movements. She was still learning, and though her enthusiasm was infectious, her balance remained precarious. "Slow down, mi amor," he called out, his voice tinged with concern. "You're doing great, but don't rush it." Emma glanced over her shoulder, her bright smile widening as she caught sight of him. "I'm fine, Daddy," she shouted, back, her confidence unwavering. Santiago couldn't help but chuckle at her boundless energy, even as his heart clenched with worry. Watching her reminded him of how much he had missed during her early years, the milestones, the triumphs, the simple joys of being a parent. Now that he was here, he vowed not to let a single moment slip by unnoticed. But just as he began to relax, disaster struck. Emma hit a patch of uneven pavement, her front wheel catching awkwardly. In an instant, her bike tipped sideways, sending her tumbling to the ground with a startled cry. Santiago's breath hitched as he leaped to his feet, his pulse racing. "Emma!" he shouted, sprinting toward her as panic surged through him. By the time he reached her side, tears were streaming down her cheeks, her small hands clutching her scraped knee. Blood welled up from the abrasion, mingling with the dirt and gravel embedded in her skin. "It hurts, Daddy," she sobbed, her voice trembling with pain and fear. Santiago dropped to his knees beside her, his own emotions threatening to overwhelm. Without hesitation, he scooped her into his arms, cradling her close as he rocked her gently. "Calm down, my love," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm here. You're safe." He pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, his hand smoothing her hair as he whispered reassurances. Though his heart was pounding, he forced himself to remain calm, knowing that his composure would help steady her. Slowly, her cries began to subside, replaced by sniffles as she buried her face against his chest. "I'm sorry, Daddy," she whimpered, her voice muffled. "I didn't mean to fall." Santiago's throat tightened and he shook his head firmly. "Oh, no, you have nothing to be sorry for," he said, his tone gentle but resolute. What's important is that you're okay." As he held her, something profound shifted within him. In that moment, surrounded by the chaos of the park and the sting of Emma's injury, Santiago realized what it truly meant to be a parent. It wasn't about grand gestures or financial provision. It was about presence. It mattered most about offering comfort and reassurance when the world felt overwhelming. Carefully, he examined her knee, his hands steady despite the turmoil inside him. "Let's clean this up, okay?" he said softly, reaching for a tissue. From his pocket, with infinite care, he dabbed at the wound, removing the dirt and debris as Emma winced but remained still. "Brave girl," he praised her, his voice filled with pride. "You're so brave." The scrape was minor, but its impact on Santiago was monumental. He understood now, more clearly than ever, that he hadn't inherited wealth or power. Instead, he had inherited something far more precious and far more fragile. He had inherited a daughter, a living, breathing embodiment of love and resilience. In this time, he vowed silently he would not lose her. As Santiago held Emma close, her sobs gradually subsiding into quiet sniffles, a profound realization washed over him. This moment, seemingly ordinary in its simplicity, crystallized the essence of his journey from a man who once prized possessions and prestige to someone who now cherished the intangible bonds of family. It was not the inheritance of wealth or corporate empires that defined him anymore. It was the legacy of love he was determined to build with Emma. Her small body nestled against his chest, her warmth seeping into him as if to remind him of the life he now held dear. The scrape on her knee was healing already, a testament to her resilience, but the memory of her fall lingered vividly in Santiago's mind. He replayed the scene in slow motion, the wobble of her bike, the panicked tilt of her body, the split second before gravity claimed her, and then her cry, sharp, piercing, and utterly helpless. It had pierced through him like nothing else ever had, a visceral reminder of how deeply his heart was tied to hers. In that instant, Santiago understood that parenthood wasn't about perfection or control. It wasn't about shielding Emma from every bump or bruise, every disappointment or heartache. It was about being there in the messy, unpredictable moments where life unfolded in all its raw beauty. It was about holding her when she cried, celebrating her victories no matter how small, and guiding her through the challenges she would inevitably face. These moments, these fragments of connection, were the threads that wove their relationship together, creating something stronger and more enduring than any material success he had once chased. Reflecting on his past, Santiago felt a pang of regret mixed with gratitude. The pursuit of material wealth, once his guiding star, now appeared hollow compared to the fulfillment he found in being a present father. He remembered the late nights spent in boardrooms, the endless networking events, the relentless drive to climb higher and accumulate more. Back then, success had been measured in titles and bank accounts, in the admiration of peers and the envy of rivals. But none of it had ever filled the void he now realized had been growing inside him all along. Now every scraped knee, every school presentation, every bedtime story felt like a brick laid in the foundation of their relationship. Each interaction, no matter how mundane, solidified his role not just as a provider, but as a protector and guide. He thought of the times Emma had shyly presented him with drawings she had created, her eyes wide with anticipation as she awaited his reaction, or the mornings when she crawled into bed with him, her tiny voice recounting dreams she could barely remember. These were the moments that mattered, the ones that shaped who they were together. Emma stirred in his arms, her small voice breaking the silence. "Daddy, can we go home now?" she asked, her tone tinged with exhaustion. The word Daddy sent a ripple of emotion through Santiago, catching him off guard. It was a title he had never imagined he would cherish so deeply, yet here it was, weaving itself into the fabric of his identity. "Yes, my love," he replied softly, standing up and adjusting her in his arms. As they began the walk back home, Santiago's mind wandered to the future filled with holidays brimming with laughter, milestones celebrated together, and everyday moments cherished. He envisioned Emma growing older, her pigtails giving way to longer hair, her bike replaced by a car. He imagined her graduating, pursuing her dreams, finding her place in the world. And through it all, he saw himself steadfast, supportive, and present. This epiphany marked a definitive turning point in Santiago's life. He was no longer the man who fled from responsibilities, seeking solace in the ephemeral highs of success. He was a father, committed to nurturing a bond that would withstand the tests of time. The fragility of this new identity was palpable, yet it was precisely this vulnerability that made it precious. Santiago knew that protecting this bond required vigilance, patience, and an unwavering commitment to being present. As they reached their doorstep, Santiago paused, looking down. At Emma's trusting face, "I love you," he said, the words simple, yet laden with the weight of his newfound resolve. Emma smiled, her innocence a poignant reminder of the purity of their connection. In her eyes, Santiago saw not just his daughter, but the reflection of his own transformation, a testament to the enduring power of love and the redemptive possibilities of fatherhood. With a deep breath, Santiago opened the door, stepping into a home that now felt fuller, warmer, and infinitely more meaningful. This was his true inheritance, a treasure far greater than any his previous life had offered, and with every step forward, he vowed to honor it, to nurture it, and to ensure that Emma always felt the steadfastness of his love. Santiago's transformation was not an overnight revelation, but a gradual awakening, one that had been quietly unfolding within him long before Emma's fall in the park. Yet, that moment crystallized what he had been feeling for some time, a profound shift in his priorities, values, and understanding of what it meant to be a father. Looking back, he could trace the beginnings of this change to the first time. He held Emma as a newborn, her impossibly small form cradled in his arms. At the time, he had been overwhelmed by a mix of awe and terror, unsure of how to reconcile his ambitions with the responsibility of caring for another human being. He had convinced himself then that providing financially would be enough, that success in business equated to success as a parent. But life had a way of challenging such assumptions, forcing him to confront the emptiness of that belief. Over the years, Santiago had missed countless milestones in his first steps, her first words, her first day of school. Each absence gnawed at him, though he had buried the guilt beneath layers of justification. "I'm building a better future for her," he would tell himself, clinging to the idea that his sacrifices would someday pay off. But as Emma grew, the cracks in that reasoning became impossible to ignore. The toys he bought and the vacations he funded couldn't fill the void left by his absence. The framed photos of her smiling face, displayed prominently in his office, only served as reminders of the life he was missing. When he re-entered her life more fully, Santiago was met with resistance not just from Laura, who understandably harbored lingering mistrust, but also from Emma herself. She was wary of him. At first, unsure of how to reconcile the distant figure in her memories with the man who now sought to play a larger role in her daily life. It had taken time, patience, and countless small gestures to earn her trust. He remembered the first time she called him Daddy without prompting, her voice tentative but genuine. It had brought him to his knees, figuratively speaking, as he realized the magnitude of what he had nearly lost. Parenting, Santiago now understood, was not about perfection. It was about showing up, again and again, even when it was hard. It was about listening when Emma recounted her day at school, even if the details seemed trivial. It was about bandaging her scraped knees, helping her practice spelling words and reading bedtime stories until his voice grew hoarse. These acts of presence, though seemingly mundane, were the building blocks of their relationship. They were the moments that taught Emma she was loved, valued, and safe. Santiago's journey had been one of unlearning as much as learning. He had to let go of the notion that love could be quantified or expressed solely through material means. Love, he realized, was in the intangibles, the quiet moments shared, laughter exchanged, the lessons imparted through example rather than words. It was in the way Emma's eyes lit up when he surprised her with pancakes on a Saturday morning, the way she reached for his hand when crossing the street. The creak of the floorboards beneath Santiago's feet seemed to reverberate through the house, louder and more pronounced than ever before. It wasn't just the familiar groan of aged wood under pressure. It was a sound that carried with it the weight of his transformation. Each step felt deliberate, as though the very act of moving through the space required him to acknowledge the profound changes within himself. Fatherhood had not merely reshaped his responsibilities, it had altered the way he saw the world around him. What had once been a house of structure of walls, beams, and furniture now pulsed with life. Its essence infused with the warmth of shared moments and the promise of countless more to come. Every corner of the home seemed to hold a memory now, each one a testament to the life they were building together. In the kitchen, Emma's crayon scribbles on the wall stood out like tiny monuments of her creativity. They weren't just marks on plaster. They were evidence of her curiosity, her joy, her need to leave her imprint on the world. Santiago remembered the first time he'd seen them, how his initial frustration at the mess had melted away when he realized what they meant. This was her space too, a place where she could express herself freely. He hadn't painted over them, choosing instead to preserve them as part of their story. They seemed less like imperfections and more like blessings, reminders of the vibrancy she brought into his life. In the living room, the faint scent of lavender lingered in the air, a remnant of Laura's candles. It was a subtle aroma, but one that evoked a sense of calm and familiarity. Santiago found himself pausing to breathe it in, letting the fragrance wrap around him like an embrace. It reminded him of quiet evenings spent reading or talking, moments when the chaos of the outside world faded into nothingness. The mismatched cushions on the couch, worn from years of use, told their own story. They weren't pristine or coordinated, but they were comfortable, inviting. They spoke of nights spent laughing, arguing, reconciling, of a family finding its rhythm together. Even the scuff marks on the hallway floor where Emma had practiced riding her tricycle held a kind of beauty. Santiago had scrubbed at them once, determined to erase the evidence of her efforts. But now he couldn't imagine the house without them. They were proof of her determination, her resilience. She had fallen countless times during those early attempts, but she always got back up, her little face set with fierce concentration. Watching her then, Santiago had felt a swell of pride, not because she succeeded, but because she kept trying. That persistence was something he admired deeply, both in her and in himself. It was a trait they shared, one that had carried him through the challenges of fatherhood. As Santiago paused in the entryway, taking in the details of the house, he realized that these small, seemingly insignificant elements were no longer just parts of his surroundings. They were pieces of a larger tapestry, threads woven together to form the fabric of their lives. The photographs lining the shelves, capturing milestones and candid moments alike, told the story of their journey. The faint hum of the refrigerator, a constant background noise he had once ignored, now symbolized the steady rhythm of their daily existence. Even the sunlight streaming through the windows, casting shifting patterns across the floor, felt imbued with meaning. It illuminated the dust motels floating lazily in the air, a reminder that life was messy, imperfect, and yet undeniably beautiful. Santiago's gaze lingered on the doorway to the living room, where Emma's laughter often spilled out like music. He thought about how much the house had changed since she came into his life, not physically but emotionally. It wasn't just a structure anymore. It was a sanctuary, a place where love and connection thrived, where every moment, no matter how mundane, carried the potential for significance. And as he stood there, absorbing the weight of it all, Santiago knew that this transformation wasn't limited to the house. It was happening within him too. He had once viewed the house as a backdrop to his existence, as a stage where he played out his roles as husband, provider, and man. But now, he saw it differently. It was alive, dynamic, shaped by the people who inhabited it, and so was he. Fatherhood had stripped away the pretenses he had clung to, revealing vulnerabilities he hadn't known he possessed. It had humbled him, forced him to confront his fears and insecurities, but it had also shown him the true measure of his worth, the love he gave and received. This realization filled him with a deep sense of gratitude, not just for Emma, but for the opportunity to grow alongside her. Taking a deep breath, Santiago stepped further into the house, his heart lightened by the knowledge that he was no longer the same man who had walked through that door months ago. He was still learning, still evolving, but he was determined to embrace the journey with purpose. For the first time in his life, he understood that the moments that mattered weren't the ones marked by accolades or achievements. They were the quiet, everyday moments, like the ones waiting for him in the living room, where Emma sat eagerly awaiting their next adventure together. Walking further into the living room, Santiago's steps slowed as if the atmosphere itself demanded reverence. The room was bathed in the soft glow of late afternoon sunlight, which filtered through the gauzy curtains, painting everything in warm hues of gold and amber. The gentle light highlighted the textures of the worn furniture and the play of shadows on the walls, creating an almost ethereal scene. Here, amidst the comforting clutter of family life, Santiago felt a profound shift in his perception. The living room, once just a space for relaxation and entertainment, it transformed into a vibrant canvas of memories and emotions, each piece of furniture and decor item whispering stories of past joys and challenges. As Santiago settled onto the couch, its familiar sag welcomed him like an old friend. The mismatched cushions, some frayed and others slightly stained, were testament to years of service and countless family gatherings. They bore the imprints of bodies that had lounged upon them, bodies that had laughed, cried, argued, and made up. These cushions were not just objects. They were silent witnesses to the life that unfolded within these walls. Santiago ran his hand over the armrest, feeling the rough texture of fabric softened by time and touch. This tactile connection grounded him, anchoring his thoughts in the present while simultaneously pulling him back through the corridors of memory. His eyes wandered to the bookshelf that dominated one wall, crammed not only with books but also with mementos collected over the years. There were seashells from beach trips, pressed flowers from spring walks, and small trinkets from travels near and far. Each item was a bookmark in the story of their lives, a tangible reminder of experiences shared and lessons learned. Among these treasures, photographs framed in various styles stood out prominently. They captured candid smiles, solemn expressions, and everything in between, chronicling the evolution of their family. One particular photo caught Santiago's eye, a picture taken on Emma's 3rd birthday. She stood in a sunlit garden, her arms outstretched towards the camera, her face alight with pure joy. Looking at it, Santiago felt a pang of nostalgia and a surge of pride. This was the legacy he was building. One smile, one laugh, one cherished moment at a time. Turning his attention to the coffee table, Santiago noticed the small vase holding a few wildflowers Emma had picked earlier that week. Their petals were beginning to wilt, but even in their fading beauty, they exuded a charm that bespoke of carefree childhood adventures. Next to the vase lay a jigsaw puzzle half completed, its colorful pieces scattered across the wooden surface. This puzzle started on a rainy Sunday, remained unfinished. A metaphor, perhaps, for the ongoing project of their family life, always a work in progress, never truly complete, but always moving forward. The air was filled with the faint scent of lavender, mingled with the earthy aroma of the potted plants that adorned the windowsills. This olfactory blend was uniquely theirs, a signature of their home that greeted them each day. It was comforting, familiar, and profoundly personal. Santiago closed his eyes briefly, inhaling deeply, letting the sensory details weave a tapestry of serenity around him. In this moment, surrounded by the tangible and intangible elements of his home, Santiago felt an overwhelming sense of belonging and purpose. This room, with its lived-in furnishings and layered histories, was more than just a part of the house. It was the heart of their family, pulsating with the lifeblood of shared experiences and boundless love. As he opened his eyes, Santiago's gaze fell upon the empty space beside him on the couch. It was here that Emma would soon sit, her small body fitting perfectly against his side, her laughter echoing off the walls as they shared another evening of simple pleasures. The anticipation of her presence filled him with warmth and a renewed commitment to cherish every fleeting moment. In this sanctuary of shared memories, Santiago found not just comfort, but a profound understanding of what truly mattered in life: the connections we nurture, the love we give, and the legacy of happiness we strive to build. Sitting on the couch, Santiago allowed himself to sink deeper into the cushions, his mind drifting effortlessly into the future. His thoughts painted vivid scenes of lazy Sunday mornings where the aroma of pancakes wafted through the air, mingling with the sounds of laughter as flour dusted their clothes. He imagined holiday gatherings, the house bustling with energy, filled with the rich sense of Laura's cooking, while Emma's delighted squeals rang out as she unwrapped presents. Quiet evenings loomed large in his mental canvas, where the soft cadence of his voice reading aloud would lull Emma into sleep, her head resting gently against his shoulder. These visions weren't mere flights of fancy. They were tangible possibilities, promises poised on the brink of becoming reality. Santiago felt a surge of determination rise within him, powerful resolve to ensure that these dreams didn't remain confined to his imagination. He vowed to do everything in his power to make certain that Emma grew up enveloped in love, stability, and joy. It wasn't just about being present for the monumental events in her life. It was about cherishing the everyday moments that collectively formed the tapestry of their shared existence. As these thoughts swirled in his mind, Santiago's heart swelled with gratitude. He recognized that the wealth and status he had once pursued paled in comparison to the richness he now experienced. This newfound appreciation stemmed not from material gains but from the profound connections he had forged with his family. Trust, her unconditional love, her infectious joy, were treasures far more valuable than any accolade or achievement could offer. In her eyes, he saw a reflection of his best self, a version of him that was patient, kind, and fully present. This deep-seated gratitude wasn't just directed at Emma. It extended to Laura, whose strength and wisdom had guided him through the tumultuous waters of parenthood. Her unwavering support and the sacrifices she made were the unsung heroes in the story of their family. Together they had built a fortress of love and resilience, a sanctuary where Emma could thrive and where they could all find solace and strength. Santiago's reflections brought a clarity that was both humbling and empowering. He understood now that his true inheritance was not the legacy of wealth or social standing that he had once aspired to leave behind. Instead, it was the enduring bonds of love and connection he was nurturing every day. This realization filled him with a sense of peace and fulfillment that he had never known before. He was no longer running from responsibility. He was embracing it, shaping it with intention and purpose. In this moment of introspection, Santiago felt a profound shift within himself. He was ready to face the challenges ahead, armed with the knowledge that his greatest achievements were not behind him but were unfolding right before his eyes. Every hug, every shared laugh, every whispered "I love you" was a brick in the foundation of a legacy that transcended material possessions, a legacy built on the enduring power of family. With this understanding, Santiago leaned back into the couch, a contented smile playing on his lips as he prepared to welcome Emma into the living room, ready to create yet another cherished memory. Emma bounded back into the living room, her small frame brimming with uncontainable excitement. Clutching her favorite movie tightly to her chest, she looked up at Santiago with eyes wide and sparkling, her cheeks flushed with the thrill of the impending activity. "Daddy, I found it," she exclaimed, her voice ringing clear and sweet, cutting through the quiet ambience of the room like a bell chiming on a crisp morning. Santiago watched her approach, his heart swelling with affection as he observed the sheer joy radiating from her. Her enthusiasm was infectious, a force that seemed to fill the room with a palpable energy. He opened his arms wide, inviting her into his embrace, and she didn't hesitate. With a giggle, she scrambled onto his lap, her tiny hands clutching the DVD case as if it were a precious artifact. Santiago wrapped his arms securely around her, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him, her warmth seeping through his shirt like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Ready?" he asked, his voice soft but tinged with amusement, his lips curling into a grin as he pressed a kiss to the top of her head. The scent of her shampoo sweet and floral filled his senses, grounding him in the present moment. She smelled like innocence, like possibility, like everything good and pure in the world. "Yes," she replied, her response bursting forth with such eagerness that it made Santiago chuckle. She wriggled slightly in his lap, her excitement barely contained as she held the movie aloft for him to see. "It's the best one, Daddy. You'll love it." Santiago glanced at the cover, already familiar with the animated characters grinning back at him. It was a film they had watched countless times before, yet each viewing felt fresh, because of the way Emma reacted to it as though it were her first time seeing it. Her wonder was boundless, her capacity for delight seemingly infinite. We couldn't help but admire that about her, the way she approached life with such unabashed enthusiasm, finding magic in the simplest things. "I'm sure I will," he said, his tone warm and reassuring. He reached for the remote on the coffee table, his movements slow and deliberate, savoring the anticipation building between them. Emma leaned forward slightly, her body tense with expectation, her eyes glued to the television screen as the opening credits began to roll. The room was suddenly bathed in the flickering glow of the screen, colors dancing across their faces and casting playful shadows on the walls. Santiago tightened his hold on her instinctively, pulling her closer as the music swelled and the animated world came to life. He could feel the rapid beat of her heart against his chest, matching the rhythm of his own. It was a moment of perfect harmony, one that encapsulated everything he had come to cherish about fatherhood: the closeness, shared joy, the quiet intimacy of simply being together. As the characters on the screen embarked on their adventure, Emma nestled further into his embrace, her head resting comfortably against his shoulder. She sighed contentedly, her earlier excitement giving way to a quieter, more serene happiness. Santiago rested his chin lightly on the top of her head, closing his eyes briefly to absorb the fullness of the moment. Steady and peaceful, mingled with the soft hum of the movie's soundtrack, creating a symphony of domestic bliss. For Santiago, this was more than just a casual evening spent watching a film. It was a ritual, a sacred exchange of love and connection that reinforced the bond they shared. Each time they sat like this, wrapped in each other's arms, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, a reminder of why he fought so hard to be the man he was today. Emma's presence was a gift, one he intended to treasure forever. "Comfy, Daddy," Emma murmured after a while, her voice drowsy but filled with contentment. She shifted slightly, snuggling deeper into his embrace, her small hand reaching up to grip his shirt as if to anchor herself to him. "And you're my favorite cuddle buddy," he replied, his voice tender and sincere. He kissed the crown of her head again, his lips lingering for a moment longer than usual. "Always." Emma giggled softly, the sound muffled against his chest. "I love you, Daddy," she said, her words simple but carrying the weight of the universe. They hung in the air between them, resonating with a truth that needed no embellishment. Santiago felt a lump rise in his throat, his emotions threatening to spill over. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to maintain composure, but the depth of his feelings was undeniable. "I love you too, Emma," he whispered, his voice steady despite the storm raging within him. "More than you'll ever know." In that moment, as the movie played on and the world outside faded into insignificance, Santiago knew, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that this was what mattered most. Not the accolades or achievements he had once chased, not the wealth or status that had once defined his ambitions, but this pure, unadulterated connection. This love so vast and encompassing that it defied explanation. This child who had taught him the true meaning of purpose and fulfillment. He tightened his hold on her once more, savoring the feel of her warm body against his, the sound of her breathing syncing with his own. The movie continued to play, its characters embarking on grand adventures. But Santiago's focus remained solely on the little girl in his arms. She was his adventure, his journey, his reason for being. And as long as he had her, he knew he would never want for anything else. As the movie played on, filling the room with colorful animations and cheerful melodies, Santiago sat motionless, his arms wrapped protectively around Emma. The flickering light from the screen danced across their faces, casting fleeting shadows that mirrored the ebb and flow of his thoughts. While Emma remained engrossed in the story, occasionally giggling at the antics of the characters, Santiago's mind was elsewhere, focused not on the fictional world unfolding before them, but on the real, tangible bond he held in his arms. This was more than a moment of shared entertainment. It was a reaffirmation of everything he had come to value. In the quiet stillness of his heart, Santiago made a silent vow, a pledge that transcended words and rooted itself in the deepest recesses of his soul. He resolved with unwavering conviction to protect this bond, to nurture it, shield it, and cherish it for as long as he lived. It wasn't a decision born of obligation or duty, but rather one fueled by an overwhelming sense of love and gratitude. Emma's presence in his life had redefined his purpose, stripping away the superficial pursuits that had once consumed him and replacing them with something far more profound: the enduring power of family. He understood now that his role as a father was not just about providing or guiding, but about being a steadfast source of love and stability, a safe harbor in the storms of life. Santiago's vow was not made lightly. He knew the road ahead would not always be smooth. Challenges would arise, moments of doubt and uncertainty would creep in, and the pressures of the outside world would inevitably test the strength of their connection. Yet he also knew that love, when nurtured with intention and care, could withstand even the fiercest trials. He vowed to meet those challenges head-on, to face them with courage and resilience, drawing strength from the very bond he sought to protect. He would not shy away from the hard conversations, the difficult decisions, or the sacrifices that might be required. Instead, he would embrace them as opportunities to deepen his relationship with Emma and to demonstrate, through action and example, the values he hoped to instill in her. This vow extended beyond mere protection. Santiago committed himself to being fully present, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. He understood that true presence meant more than sharing space. It meant listening without distraction, engaging with genuine interest, and responding with empathy. It meant celebrating her triumphs, however small, and comforting her in her moments of sorrow. It meant teaching her to navigate the complexities of life with grace and integrity, while also learning from her boundless curiosity and optimism. He vowed to be the kind of father who encouraged her dreams, supported her growth, and celebrated her individuality, even when it diverged from his own expectations. At the core of his vow was a promise to prioritize their connection above all else. In a world that often glorified external achievements, wealth, status, recognition, Santiago had come to understand that the true measure of success lay in the quality of one's relationships. He vowed to resist the pull of distractions, to carve out time for the moments that truly mattered, and to ensure that Emma always felt seen, heard, and valued. Whether it was through lazy Sunday mornings, holiday traditions, or quiet evenings spent reading together, he pledged to create a life rich with shared experiences and mutual respect. As these thoughts crystallized in his mind, Santiago felt a profound sense of peace wash over him. The weight of his vow was immense, but it was also liberating. It gave him clarity and direction, a North Star by which to navigate the complexities of fatherhood. He tightened his hold on Emma, drawing her closer as if to seal the promise with the warmth of his embrace. Her head rested against his chest, her breathing steady and rhythmic, a reminder of the trust she placed in him, trust he vowed never to betray. In that moment, Santiago allowed himself to dream not of grand accomplishments or societal acclaim, but of the quiet, everyday moments that would define their lives together. He envisioned Emma growing older, her laughter maturing but never losing its sparkle, her curiosity expanding but never dimming. He saw himself walking beside her, hand in hand, through every stage of her journey, offering guidance when needed and stepping back when necessary. He imagined her looking back on their shared memories with fondness, knowing that she had been loved unconditionally and raised with integrity. The realization struck him with quiet force. This was his legacy, not the wealth or status he had once aspired to leave behind, but the enduring impact of the love he gave and the person he became. Because of it, it wasn't the kind of epiphany that came with fireworks or fanfare, but rather a gentle settling within him, like the first rays of dawn breaking through the haze of night. Santiago sat still, letting the weight of this truth sink into his bones. His eyes drifted to the small figure nestled against him, her head resting lightly on his chest, her breathing soft and steady. Emma. Her presence alone seemed to anchor him, grounding him in a way that no material achievement ever had. It was a legacy built not on possessions, but on presence, not on accolades, but on authenticity. These words echoed in his mind, resonating deeply as if they had been waiting there all along. buried beneath years of striving and self-doubt. For so long, Santiago had measured his worth by what he could accumulate: titles, recognition, the trappings of success that society deemed valuable. But now, as he sat there cradling Emma close, those hollow pursuits felt distant, almost foreign. What truly mattered was here, in this moment, in the warmth of her trust, in the quiet strength of their bond. It wasn't about leaving behind a name or fortune. It was about leaving behind something far more profound: a life shaped by love, connection, and the courage to be fully present. And as he sat there, holding Emma close, Santiago felt a deep and abiding certainty that this was what truly mattered. This was everything. The room around them seemed to fade into the background, the muted colors of the movie screen casting flickering shadows on the walls. Yet none of it registered beyond the periphery of his awareness. All that existed was the steady rhythm of Emma's breathing, the faint scent of her hair, and the overwhelming sense of clarity washing over him. He realized then that this was not just a fleeting moment of insight. It was a transformation, one that would guide him for the rest of his days. The movie continued to play, its characters embarking on adventures that would soon fade from memory. Yet Santiago found himself increasingly detached from the unfolding drama on the screen, his thoughts consumed instead by the silent promise forming within him. It wasn't spoken aloud, nor did it need to be. This vow was etched into the fabric of his being, a quiet resolve that pulsed through every fiber of his body. To honor the bond he shared with Emmett, to protect it fiercely, nurture it tenderly, and let it guide him through the rest of his days.
No.
That was his mission now, one he carried not out of obligation, but out of profound gratitude. What made this promise so powerful was its simplicity. There were no grand gestures or elaborate plans involved, just an unwavering commitment to show up, to be there when she needed him most, whether it was during moments of joy or times of struggle. To listen without judgment, to comfort without hesitation, and to love without conditions. In Emma's eyes, Santiago had found not just redemption, but a purpose that transcended all else. She had saved him in ways he hadn't even realized he needed saving. Before her, his life had been a series of disconnected ambitions, each one leading him further away from the essence of who he truly was. Now, her love anchored him, giving him direction and meaning. As the film's credits began to roll, the room grew dimmer, the soft hum of the television blending with the quiet rhythm of Emma's breathing. Santiago tightened his hold on her slightly, feeling the weight of his vow settle deeper into his soul. This was no fleeting impulse born of sentimentality. It was a solemn pledge, one he intended to carry forward with every decision he made. He thought of the countless moments ahead, the laughter, the tears, the milestones yet unseen, and understood that each one would shape not only Emma's future, but his own. Parenthood wasn't just about raising a child. It was about becoming someone worthy of being raised by. In that knowledge, Santiago found both humility and strength. For in Emma's love, he had discovered a purpose that would sustain him, inspire him, and define him for the rest of his life, not as a man seeking validation from the world, but as a father determined to leave behind something far greater than accolades or achievements. Something real, something eternal. In the quiet cocoon of the living room, the final scenes of the movie unfolded, their vibrant energy muted by the serene atmosphere enveloping Santiago and Emma. The room itself seemed to breathe with a gentle rhythm, the soft glow of the television casting a warm, flickering light across the familiar contours of their shared space. The air was thick with a comforting stillness, broken only by the faint crackle of the screen and the occasional creak of the old wooden floorboards beneath them. Outside, the world pressed on cars rumbled down the street, distant voices carried on the evening breeze, but here, within these four walls, time felt suspended, as if the universe had paused to grant them this moment of clarity. Santiago's awareness sharpened, his senses attuned to every detail of their surroundings. The plush cushions of the couch cradled them, worn and familiar, bearing the imprint of countless evenings spent together. A knitted throw blanket lay draped over the armrest, its edges frayed from years of use, a testament to the simple comforts of home. On the coffee table before them, An empty mug sat beside a stack of books, their spines creased and well-loved, hinting at the stories they had shared and the worlds they had explored together. Even the faint scent of lavender from a candle burned earlier lingered in the air, weaving a subtle thread of calm through the room. Emma's weight against him was a constant grounding presence. Her small frame fit perfectly against his chest, her breaths rising and falling in sync with his own. Each exhale carried a warmth that seemed to seep into his very core, dissolving the last remnants of tension that had clung to him for so long. He could feel the faint beat of her heart through the layers of clothing, a steady rhythm that mirrored the quiet cadence of their shared existence. It was in this closeness, this unspoken communion, that Santiago felt the profound shift within himself, clarity that had eluded him for years crystallizing into focus. The silence between them was neither awkward nor empty, but rich with meaning, a language spoken without words. It was in this stillness that Santiago realized how much he depended on Emma, not just as a parent caring for a child, but as a man finding solace in the purest form of connection, her trust in him. Her unwavering belief that he would always be there had become the cornerstone of his existence. It wasn't merely that she relied on him, it was that he relied on her too, in ways he was only beginning to fully comprehend. Her laughter, her curiosity, her boundless capacity for joy had awakened something dormant within him, a sense of purpose that transcended the hollow pursuits of his past. Here in this cocoon of quiet intimacy, Santiago understood that true fulfillment lay not in external validation, but in the simple, profound act of being present. Emma's love had done more than heal the fractures in Santiago's life. It had reshaped him entirely, chiseling away the layers of pretense and ambition that had once defined him. For her, Santiago had been a man driven by the relentless pursuit of external validation. He had worn his accomplishments like armor, believing they shielded him from the vulnerabilities he feared acknowledging. Titles, promotions, accolades, they were trophies he collected to prove his worth, to silence the inner voice that whispered he wasn't enough. But beneath the polished surface of success lay a man burdened by emptiness, his achievements failing to fill the void within. It was only when Emma entered his life, with her unfiltered affection and boundless trust, that Santiago began to shed the weight of those expectations. Her love stripped him bare, revealing a version of himself capable of vulnerability, humility, and profound devotion. Fatherhood had taught him that strength wasn't measured by dominance or control, but by the ability to nurture, to listen, to be present. Santiago remembered the early days when the sheer enormity of responsibility had terrified him. He had feared failure, feared disappointing Emma, feared not being enough. Yet as months turned into years, he discovered that his worth wasn't tied to what he achieved, but to what he gave and what he received in return. Every hug, every whispered "I love you," every shared moment of laughter or quiet companionship became a testament to the power of connection. Emma taught him that true strength lay in showing up, day after day, with an open heart and a willingness to grow. She taught him that love wasn't about perfection, but about presence. And in that connection, Santiago had found his redemption. Emma's unconditional acceptance allowed him to confront parts of himself he had long ignored or suppressed. Her laughter reminded him of the joy that had once seemed so elusive. Her curiosity reignited his own sense of wonder, pulling him out of the monotony of adult routines and into a world where questions were as important as answers. Her boundless capacity for forgiveness showed him that mistakes weren't failures, but opportunities to learn and grow. Through her eyes, Santiago saw himself not as a man defined by his shortcomings, but as someone worthy of love simply because he existed. It was a revelation that transformed him, turning him into a man who no longer ran from vulnerability, but embraced it as a source of strength. But it wasn't just redemption he had discovered. It was purpose. It's a purpose so vast and encompassing that it defied the limitations of his former aspirations. The love he shared with Emma wasn't fleeting or conditional, force that anchored him to something greater than himself. It gave his life meaning, a trajectory that stretched beyond the confines of his own desires. Santiago realized that every decision he made, every challenge he faced, every sacrifice he endured was informed by the knowledge that he was shaping not just his own life, but hers as well. Santiago sat cross-legged on the weathered wooden floor of his modest living room, a space that had once felt so impersonal, but now radiated warmth and meaning. Before him lay an open photo album, its pages yellowed with time, yet alive with memories captured in faded ink and grainy snapshots. Each photograph told a story of laughter shared under golden sunsets, of tiny hands gripping his fingers as they took their first steps together, of quiet moments where words weren't needed because love filled the silence. These were not grand gestures or milestones etched into history books. They were small, unassuming acts of connection that Santiago now understood held profound significance. They were the foundation upon which he was building something far greater than himself, legacy rooted not in possessions or accolades, but in enduring bonds. This newfound purpose unfolded gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, like dawn breaking over a horizon cloaked in shadow. Where Santiago once sought fulfillment through external markers, the promotion, the title, the applause he now found it in the quiet rhythms of everyday life. It wasn't the clinking of champagne glasses or the weight of a trophy in his hands that stirred his soul anymore, but the way Emma's eyes lit up when she discovered something new. Her endless questions about why the sky was blue or how birds could fly became sacred rituals, each one deepening the connection between them. Even mundane tasks, like holding her hand as they crossed busy streets, carried a weight he hadn't anticipated. These moments weren't just fleeting fragments of time. They were deliberate choices to be present, to show up fully for someone who depended on him completely. As Santiago turned another page in the album, his fingers lingered over a photograph of Emma sitting on his shoulders during a family hike. She was grinning ear to ear, her arms outstretched as though trying to touch the clouds. He remembered how light she felt then, her giggles floating upward like wind chimes in the breeze. That day, he hadn't been thinking about legacies or long-term impacts. He'd simply wanted to give her a better view of the world. But now, looking back, he realized that this act lifting her higher, giving her access to perspectives beyond her own, was symbolic of what he hoped to achieve as a father. It wasn't enough to provide materially or ensure her happiness in the moment. His role was larger, more intricate. It was about modeling values, instilling principles that would guide her long after he was gone. Compassion, integrity, resilience. These were the cornerstones of the foundation he was laying. It's not through lectures or proclamations, but through lived example. Realization didn't come all at once. In fact, there were days when doubt crept in, whispering that he wasn't doing enough, that the intangible nature of his efforts might leave no lasting mark. Yet every time he caught Emma watching him closely, mimicking the way he spoke to neighbors, the patience he showed when untangling her shoelaces, the care he put into repairing a broken toy, he knew she was absorbing more than he could ever articulate. She was learning from him, even when neither of them realized it. And in those moments, Santiago felt a quiet pride bloom within him. This was the kind of legacy he wanted to leave behind, one built on love, resilience, and unwavering presence. With a soft sigh, Santiago closed the photo album and leaned back against the couch, letting the afternoon sunlight stream across his face. For the first time in years, maybe even decades, he felt aligned with himself, with his purpose, with the future he envisioned for his family. The path ahead wouldn't always be easy, but he welcomed the challenge. After all, it was in embracing responsibility, vulnerability, and sacrifice that he had found his true strength. This was the man he was becoming, brick by brick, moment by moment. Though the structure of his legacy was still taking shape, he knew it would stand firm, grounded in the enduring power of love. Once, Santiago's world revolved around the glittering allure of success as defined by society titles that adorned business cards, possessions that lined his shelves, and achievements that earned nods of approval in elite circles. These external markers had been his compass, guiding every decision and ambition with the promise of validation and prestige. Yet as he navigated the corridors of corporate life, a gnawing emptiness began to take root within him. The promotions that once thrilled him started to feel hollow, the material acquisitions less fulfilling, and the applause of peers seemed to echo into silence rather than resonate with satisfaction. It was during one particularly restless night Staring at the ceiling while the city hummed outside his window, that Santiago realized the futility of chasing external validations. The titles and possessions, though impressive on paper, offered no solace or joy in solitude. They couldn't fill the void that seemed to grow with each passing day. It was a stark revelation that brought a wave of introspection, forcing him to confront the shallowness of his pursuits. This internal turmoil was exacerbated by the arrival of Emma into his life. Her presence was both a beacon and a mirror, reflecting back to him the simplicity and purity of genuine connections. Watching Emma discover the world with wide-eyed wonderment made Santiago acutely aware of how much he had missed in his pursuit of professional accolades. Her laughter was infectious, her curiosity boundless, and her love unconditional all. Qualities that highlighted the superficiality of his previous life goals. The transformation in Santiago was gradual yet profound. Initially resistant to change, he found himself increasingly drawn to the simple pleasures of parenthood. The joy in Emma's eyes as she learned to identify different bird songs, the trust in her grip when crossing a street, and the comfort she derived from bedtime stories began to reshape his understanding of success. These moments, though seemingly ordinary, carried a depth and richness that no amount of wealth or status could replicate. Emma's influence extended beyond mere activities. She became a catalyst for Santiago's personal growth. Her dependency taught him the value of being needed. Her innocence reminded him of the beauty and simplicity. And her unconditional love showed him the power of giving without expecting anything in return. As these lessons unfolded, Santiago's priorities shifted dramatically. The relentless chase for external validation gave way to a deeper, more intrinsic form of fulfillment. He began to see his role not just as a provider, but as a nurturer and a mentor, shaping the values and character of the next generation. In embracing this new perspective, Santiago experienced a liberation he hadn't known before. Freed from the shackles of societal expectations, he found joy in the everyday and strength in vulnerability. Parenthood, once viewed as a potential hindrance to his ambitions, became the very essence of his existence. It was in loving and being loved by Emma that Santiago discovered what truly mattered, a lesson that would redefine his legacy and enrich his life in ways he had never imagined. Every interaction with Emma became a thread in the tapestry of their lives, weaving together moments that, while ordinary on the surface, carried the weight of profound significance. Santiago cherished these moments deeply, finding in them the essence of what it meant to be a father. On weekend mornings, as sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows, casting playful patterns on the walls, Santiago would sit with Emma at the breakfast table. Here, amidst the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and warm toast, he engaged her with stories of his childhood adventures. Her eyes, wide with wonder, reflected a mix of awe and curiosity, urging him to delve deeper into tales of youthful escapades and lessons learned. These storytelling sessions were not merely about entertainment. They were subtle lessons in bravery, empathy, and the importance of learning from mistakes. Walking to the park, a routine activity transformed into an educational journey.
Santiago
Encouraged Emma to observe the world around them, the rustling leaves, the chirping birds, the bustling neighborhood cats. He pointed out details she might have overlooked, teaching her to appreciate the intricacies of nature and community. "See how the trees bend slightly towards the sun?" he would say, drawing her attention to the interplay of light and shadow. "They reach out for warmth and nourishment, just like we do." These walks were not only opportunities for physical exercise, but also for intellectual and emotional growth, cultivating a sense of awareness and appreciation for the environment. Evenings were reserved for quieter, more intimate moments. Bath time was a ritual steeped in laughter and splashes, where Santiago used playful banter to teach Emma about water conservation and hygiene. As bubbles floated around her, giggles echoing off the bathroom tiles, he gently explained the importance of respecting resources and taking care of oneself. These conversations, woven seamlessly into their daily routines, helped build a foundation of respect and responsibility in Emma's young mind. Bedtime stories provided another crucial platform for imparting wisdom. Under the soft glow of her bedside lamp, Santiago read aloud from books that spanned genres and themes, from tales of courageous heroes to narratives about friendship and loss. Each story was carefully selected to instill values such as empathy, courage, and resilience. After reading, he would often engage Emma in discussions about the characters' decisions and dilemmas, encouraging her to think critically and empathetically. "What do you think the hero should have done differently?" he might ask, sparking thoughtful reflections that sometimes led to insightful revelations. Through these varied interactions, Santiago was not merely participating in daily activities. He was actively molding Emma's character and worldview. Each moment was an opportunity to teach, to learn, and to connect on a deeper level. By embedding lessons within the fabric of their everyday lives, Santiago ensured that the values he esteemed, compassion, integrity, and resilience, were not abstract concepts, but tangible experiences that Emma could relate to and understand. This approach to parenting, rich in intentionality and engagement, was pivotal in sculpting the person Emma was becoming, layer by layer, day by day. Santiago's commitment to embodying compassion, integrity, and resilience was not confined to theoretical discussions or lofty aspirations. It permeated every aspect of his daily life, transforming his actions into a living testament of these values. His approach to parenting transcended mere verbal instruction, as he recognized that children are keen observers who learn primarily through imitation. Thus, Santiago consciously modeled the behaviors he wished to instill in Emma, ensuring that his actions consistently mirrored the principles he espoused. Compassion, for instance, was demonstrated through Santiago's interactions with others. Whether it was offering a listening ear to a neighbor struggling with personal issues or volunteering at local community events, Santiago ensured that Emma witnessed firsthand the impact of kindness and empathy. During these occasions, he would explain to Emma why helping others was important, linking these acts of service to broader themes of human connection and mutual support. "When we help someone, we're not just making their day better," he would tell her. "We're showing them that they matter." These moments not only reinforced the value of compassion, but also helped Emma understand her role in fostering a kinder, more inclusive world. Integrity, too, was a cornerstone of Santiago's behavior, evident in both his professional and personal conduct. At work, he adhered strictly to ethical standards, refusing to compromise on quality or honesty, even when shortcuts might have expedited success. He shared these experiences with Emma, explaining the importance of standing by one's principles regardless of external pressures. "Doing the right thing isn't always easy," he admitted, "but it's what defines us." This transparency about his challenges and choices provided Emma with a realistic framework for navigating her own moral dilemmas, equipping her with the courage to uphold her values despite adversity. Resilience, perhaps the most nuanced of the values Santiago sought to impart, was woven into their daily routines through a blend of encouragement and practical demonstration. When faced with setbacks, whether minor inconveniences or significant hurdles, Santiago approached them with a calm determination that Emma quickly began to emulate. He involved her in problem-solving processes, allowing her to witness and participate in overcoming obstacles. One memorable instance occurred when a sudden storm damaged part of their garden. Instead of expressing frustration, Santiago gathered tools and, with Emma's assistance, set about repairing the damage. As they worked side by side, he emphasized the importance of perseverance and adaptability. "Sometimes things don't go as planned," he explained, "but how we respond is what truly matters." Through these consistent demonstrations of compassion, integrity, and resilience, Santiago crafted a legacy that transcended words. His actions served as a blueprint for Emma, illustrating the transformative power of living according to one's values. By witnessing her father navigate life's complexities with grace and conviction, Emma absorbed lessons that would shape her character and guide her decisions long into the future. This intentional modeling of values was not just about teaching Emma what to believe. It was about showing her how to live authentically and responsibly, ensuring that the legacy he built would endure through her actions as well. The mantle of fatherhood, heavy with the responsibilities it entailed, did not crush Santiago. Instead, it fortified him, filling him with a quiet determination that resonated through every fiber of his being. Rather than viewing these duties as burdensome weights, Santiago embraced them as vital components of his new identity. Every morning, as he prepared breakfast for Emma, he was reminded of the dual roles he played, that of provider and protector. This duality was not a source of stress, but a driving force that fueled his resolve to create a nurturing environment where Emma could thrive. Each choice Santiago made, from the career paths he pursued to the allocation of his free time, was now filtered through the lens of his family's well-being. Gone were the days when professional advancement was the sole focus of his ambition. Now, he evaluated every opportunity based on its potential to enhance the quality of life for his family. Would this job offer stability? Could this project afford him more time with Emma? These considerations guided his decisions, aligning his personal aspirations with the collective goals of his household. The shift in his priorities was palpable. Santiago found himself declining lucrative offers that demanded too much travel, opting instead for positions that allowed him to be physically present in Emma's life. He invested time in activities that strengthened their bond, such as enrolling in parent-child cooking classes or joining a local hiking group where they could explore nature together. These activities were not merely recreational. They were strategic choices aimed at fostering a deeper connection and creating lasting memories. Moreover, Santiago's approach to leisure changed significantly. Once a fervent enthusiast of high adrenaline, sports, and late-night social gatherings, he now preferred evenings spent reading with Emma or working on DIY projects around the house. These simpler pleasures brought a satisfaction that external achievements never could. The laughter shared over a botched painting project or the triumph of successfully baking cookies from scratch were moments imbued with a profound sense of accomplishment and joy. The transformation in Santiago's lifestyle was not just a change in activities, but a fundamental realignment of his values. He no longer lived solely for personal gain, but for the enrichment of his family unit. This paradigm shift infused his daily life with a purpose that transcended individual success. Every action he took, every decision he made, was a step towards building a legacy of love and stability. The quiet determination that filled him was not born out of obligation, but out of a deep-seated desire to see Emma grow into a compassionate, resilient individual, equipped to face the world with integrity and grace. But thus, Santiago's embrace of responsibility was not a surrender to duty, but an empowering acceptance of his role as a father. It shaped his decisions, redefined his priorities, and enriched his life with a fulfillment that was both profound and enduring. Through this transformation, Santiago not only secured a prosperous future for his family, but also cultivated a personal peace that stemmed from knowing he was exactly where he was meant to be. As Santiago sat on the edge of Emma's bed, tucking her in beneath the soft, star-patterned quilt, his thoughts drifted beyond the immediate warmth of the moment to the vast expanse of possibilities that lay ahead for his daughter. The gentle rise and fall of her chest, the serene expression on her sleeping face, prompted a cascade of reflections about the woman she might one day become. With each breath she took, Santiago envisioned her stepping confidently into adulthood. Her character shaped by the values he had so painstakingly woven into their shared experiences. He wondered if Emma would recall the bedtime stories that had become a cherished nightly ritual. Would she remember the tales of brave explorers and wise sages, the moral lessons subtly embedded within fantastical adventures? Santiago hoped that these narratives had planted seeds of courage and discernment within her, preparing her to navigate life's complexities with wisdom and grace. The thought of her recalling these moments, perhaps sharing similar stories with her own children someday, filled him with a quiet pride. Similarly, he pondered the impact of his encouragement during times of fear and uncertainty. There were countless instances when Emma had hesitated at the threshold of a new experience, whether it was her first day at school, climbing to the top of the playground slide, or speaking in front of her class. Each time, Santiago had stood beside her, offering reassurance and support. "You can do this," he would say, his voice steady and sure. "I'm here with you." He yearned for these assurances to echo in her mind whenever she faced daunting challenges in the future, reminding her of her inherent strength and capability. Most poignantly, Santiago dwelled on the countless moments when he had enveloped her in his arms, whispering, "You are loved, no matter what." These declarations of unconditional affection were the threads that bound their relationship, weaving a safety net of security and belonging. He prayed that this foundational love would serve as an anchor throughout her life, steadying her during storms and celebrating her through triumphs. The idea that Emma might carry this assurance within her heart, a sanctuary of love to retreat to in times of need, was a legacy Santiago cherished above all else. These musings were not exercises in nostalgia, but reflections on the tangible impact of his actions. Each bedtime story, each word of encouragement, each embrace was a stone laid in the pathway of Emma's future. Santiago understood that while he could not predict every twist and turn her life might take, he could influence the lens through which she viewed the world. By instilling in her a sense of worth, resilience, and compassion, he hoped to equip her not only to face life's inevitable adversities, but to emerge stronger and wiser from them. As he kissed Emma's forehead and turned off the bedside lamp, Santiago felt a profound connection to the continuum of generations. He was not just raising a child, he was nurturing a future adult whose choices and actions would ripple outward, affecting others in ways he could scarcely imagine. This realization imbued his role as a father with a sense of eternal significance. The legacy he was crafting was not confined to the walls of their home or the span of his lifetime. It was an enduring gift that would transcend time, touching lives and shaping destinies long after he was gone. In the quiet darkness of Emma's room, Santiago reaffirmed his commitment to this noble endeavor. He would continue to sow seeds of love and resilience, trusting that they would grow into a robust tree under whose shade many would find rest. This vision of Emma's future where she stood tall, rooted in the values he had imparted, was both his inspiration and his reward. It was a legacy written not in ink or stone, but in the hearts of those she would touch, testament to the enduring power of a father's love. As Santiago sat cradling Emma in the dim glow of the living room, the credits of a movie they had watched together rolled silently on the screen, fading slowly into blackness. The room, bathed in the soft luminescence of a nearby lamp, felt like a cocoon insulated from the chaos of the outside world. Outside, cars honked intermittently, and distant voices mingled with the occasional bark of a dog. But inside, there was only the rhythmic cadence of Emma's breathing and the faint hum of the refrigerator in the adjacent kitchen. Santiago tightened his hold on her, pulling her closer, as if to shield her from any lingering uncertainties lurking beyond their haven. His heart swelled with a gratitude so immense it felt almost too vast to contain, spilling over into the quiet stillness that surrounded them. The weight of responsibility that had once loomed large over his early days as a father now seemed distant, almost laughable in hindsight. He remembered those initial fears vividly, the sleepless nights spent questioning his adequacy, the anxiety that prickled at his nerves every time Emma cried inconsolably. The irrational dread that one misstep might irreparably harm her fragile psyche. Back then, the demands of parenthood had felt suffocating, an unrelenting tide, threatening to pull him under. But tonight, as he sat enveloped in the comforting warmth of their shared sanctuary, those fears appeared as faint shadows, barely discernible. Against the radiant clarity of the present moment, what had once terrified him now felt like a gift he could scarcely comprehend. Responsibility, vulnerability, sacrifice, these were no longer burdens to avoid, but treasures to cherish. Santiago marveled at how profoundly his perspective had shifted. Parenthood had stripped away layers of pretense, revealing truths he had been too afraid or too distracted to acknowledge before. It wasn't the accolades or material achievements that defined a meaningful life. It was the willingness to show up fully, to be present even when it was hard, to embrace the messiness of love without reservation. In this openness, Santiago had discovered a reservoir of strength he never knew existed. It wasn't the kind of strength that came from dominance or control, but from nurturing, listening, and simply being there. Each hug, each whispered reassurance. Each shared laugh had become a testament to the transformative power of connection. Emma stirred slightly in his arms, her head nestling further into the crook of his elbow. Santiago glanced down at her, marveling at the way her presence had reshaped him. She had peeled back the layers of ambition and validation-seeking that had once defined him, leaving behind a version of himself that felt truer, more authentic. The man he had been before Emma Man, chasing hollow achievements, tethered to societal expectations, felt like a stranger now. Emma's love had not just redeemed him, had fundamentally transformed him. It turned him into someone who no longer ran from responsibility but faced it with resolve. Someone who understood that the greatest victories were not the ones applauded by crowds, but the quiet triumphs of showing up, day after day, for the people who mattered most. The room fell silent except for the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Time seemed to stretch and contract simultaneously, each second laden with significance, yet slipping away effortlessly. Santiago's mind wandered briefly to the future, imagining the ripples of their shared moments spreading outward, touching lives far beyond their immediate circle. He thought of Emma growing older, carrying pieces of their shared experiences into her own relationships, her own family, pictured. Her telling bedtime stories to her own children, her voice echoing the same tones of reassurance and love he had tried to impart. These visions weren't flights of fancy but glimpses of a legacy already taking shape. One built not on grand gestures but on the quiet, steadfast power of presence. In this moment, Santiago felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not just for Emma, but for the journey they were on together. Parenthood had taught him that love wasn't static. It was a living, breathing entity that grew and evolved with every shared experience. It required effort, yes, but it also offered immeasurable rewards. The vulnerability it demanded had once frightened him, but now he saw it as the very essence of strength. It was in giving himself fully to this role and embracing the imperfections and uncertainties that Santiago had found his true self. He was no longer living solely for himself, but for the family they were building together, a family grounded in love, resilience, and unwavering presence. As the final frame of the movie disappeared and the screen went dark, Santiago made a silent promise to himself. He would continue to grow, to learn, to evolve, not for the sake of proving anything to the world, but for the sake of being the father Emma deserved. He would protect her, nurture her, and cherish her with every fiber of his being, knowing that in her love, he had found not just redemption, but a purpose that transcended all else. This was the legacy he wanted to leave behind, one that would sustain him, inspire him, and define him for the rest of his life. Santiago's journey into parenthood had begun shrouded in apprehension, a daunting path marked by the unknown. The prospect of parenthood, with its relentless demands and inherent vulnerability, initially filled him with trepidation. The exposure of his weaknesses, the possibility of failure, and the sheer weight of responsibility. However, as days turned into months and then years, these very fears morphed into unexpected strengths, anchoring him in a newfound fortitude. The transformation was neither swift nor seamless. Initially, Santiago grappled with the raw edges of vulnerability that parenthood exposed. Each cry from Emma, each stumble in her steps, echoed his own uncertainties and inadequacies. It was precisely in these moments of perceived weakness that Santiago discovered an unparalleled strength. The act of soothing Emma's tears, of steadying her wobbly legs, forced him to confront his fears head-on. Gradually, he learned that vulnerability was not a liability, but a profound source of power. It allowed him to connect deeply with Emma, to understand her needs, and respond with empathy and patience. Parenthood demanded sacrifices that Santiago had not anticipated. Sleepless nights became a norm, and personal luxuries took a backseat to Emma's needs. Yet these sacrifices, though challenging, fostered a resilience in Santiago that surprised him. Each sacrifice made for Emma was a testament to his evolving. Strength is strength that was not loud or obvious, but quiet and enduring. It was in these sacrifices that Santiago found a profound sense of purpose and fulfillment, realizing that true strength lies not in holding back, but in giving freely. Moreover, Santiago's role as a father compelled him to shed the layers of pretense that he had worn for so long. The pursuit of external validation, once a driving force, dwindled in importance as he immersed himself in the genuine connections formed through parenthood. Emma's unconditional love and trust stripped away his facade, revealing a more authentic version of himself. This authenticity, although initially unsettling, became a cornerstone of his strength. It enabled him to lead with integrity and sincerity, qualities that not only enhanced his relationship with Emma, but also enriched his interactions with the world at large. In embracing the vulnerabilities that parenthood presented, Santiago unearthed a reservoir of strength that was both surprising and empowering. The fears that once loomed large over his life as a father transformed into pillars of strength, supporting him as he navigated the complexities of raising a child. Parenthood, with all its challenges, had not weakened him, but had instead forged a resilience and determination that defined his new identity. Santiago's journey underscored a profound truth. In the tender embrace of vulnerability lies an indomitable strength, one that propels us to face life's adversities with courage and grace. As Santiago reflected on his journey, he recognized that Emma's presence had not merely altered his life, it utterly transformed him. The man he had been before her arrival, a man driven by hollow achievements and external validation, now seemed like a distant memory, a shadow of someone he no longer recognized. Emma's love had acted as both a mirror and a catalyst, stripping away the layers of pretense and ambition that had once defined him. Yes. Through her eyes, he saw himself anew, not as a figure striving for recognition, but as a person capable of nurturing, listening, and being fully present. Her dependence on him had revealed a depth of strength he hadn't known he possessed. A strength rooted not in dominance or control, but in the quiet, steadfast acts of caregiving and connection. Every interaction with Emma became a testament to the power of love to reshape and redefine. Her laughter, her curiosity, her unconditional trust, they were all invitations to step into a newer, truer version of himself. Santiago found that the more he gave of himself to her, the more he discovered his own capacity for growth. The man who had once shied away from vulnerability now embraced it wholeheartedly, recognizing it as the foundation of his strength. Emma's love had not just redeemed him from the emptiness of his former pursuits. It had elevated him, turning him into someone who no longer ran from responsibility, but faced it with resolve and purpose. This transformation was not fleeting or superficial. It was a profound reorientation of his values, priorities, and sense of self. Santiago no longer measured his worth by the accolades he received or the possessions he accumulated. Instead, he found fulfillment in the everyday acts of connection, reading bedtime stories, answering endless questions, holding her hand as they crossed the street. These moments, though seemingly ordinary, carried a weight and significance that surpassed any external marker of success. They were the threads of a legacy he was building, one rooted in compassion, integrity, and resilience. Emma's influence extended beyond his personal evolution. It shaped the way he moved through the world. Presence taught him the importance of being intentional with his time, his energy, and his choices. No longer was he content to drift through life aimlessly, chasing hollow victories. Instead, he approached each day with a clear sense of purpose, guided by the desire to model the values he hoped she would carry into the world. Compassion, integrity, resilience, these were not abstract ideals, but lived principles demonstrated. Through his actions and decisions, Santiago understood that his role as a father was not just about providing for Emma's needs or ensuring her happiness, but about equipping her with the tools to navigate life with grace and courage. The transformation Emma inspired in Santiago was not confined to his relationship with her. It rippled outward, touching every aspect of his life. His relationships with friends, colleagues, and even strangers were infused with a newfound authenticity and empathy. He listened more intently, responded with greater patience, and approached conflicts with a willingness to understand rather than dominate. The man who had once prioritized personal gain now sought to contribute meaningfully to the lives of others. recognizing that his strength lay not in what he achieved for himself, but in what he could give to those around him. In Emma's love, Santiago had found not just redemption, but a profound purpose that transcended his individual desires and aspirations. She had shown him that true fulfillment comes, not from external validation, but from the connections we forge and the values we embody. Her presence had transformed him into a man who no longer feared vulnerability, but embraced it as a source of strength. She had turned him into someone who no longer ran from responsibility, but faced it with unwavering resolve. And in doing so, she had given him a gift far greater than any possession or title, a legacy of love that would endure long after he was gone. As Santiago sat there, cradling Emma close, he felt an overwhelming surge of gratitude. Gratitude so profound it seemed to encompass not just his present, but the entirety of his journey. Parenthood, once a daunting prospect filled with fears of inadequacy and vulnerability, had become the very essence of his strength. It was in the act of giving himself fully to Emma, in embracing the challenges and uncertainties of fatherhood, that Santiago had discovered a reservoir of resilience he never knew existed. The transformation he had undergone was not merely personal, but deeply relational, rooted in the love and trust Emma had placed in him. This love had redeemed him from the emptiness of chasing external validation and had anchored him in a purpose far greater than himself. Looking ahead, Santiago envisioned a future where the values he had instilled in Emma would ripple outward, shaping not only her life, but the lives of those she touched. He imagined her stepping confidently into adulthood, her character forged by the compassion, integrity, and resilience he had modeled. He hoped she would carry these principles into her relationships, her work, and her community, creating a legacy of kindness and strength that would endure long after he was gone. The bedtime stories, the words of encouragement, the moments of unconditional love, they were not just fleeting memories, but enduring gifts that would guide her through life's triumphs and trials. This realization filled Santiago with a quiet determination. He understood now that his role as a father was not just about providing for Emma's immediate needs, but about shaping the person she would become and the impact she would have on the world. Parenthood had taught him that true fulfillment comes not from external achievements, but from the connections we nurture and the values we pass on. In Emma's love, Santiago had found not just redemption, but a purpose that transcended all else, a purpose that would sustain him, inspire him, and define him for the rest of his life. As he held her close, Santiago knew that the legacy he was building was one of love, a legacy that would outlast him and continue to ripple outward, touching lives for generations to come.